think we'll get started, folks. People are joining at 15 right now, but hopefully we'll get some people in. Just a brief general meeting announcement, and that's it. Today I got an email from Phil and Lois, and given the amended COVID restrictions, they're in a position now to start planning for a resumption of our prowls on Sunday, June 6th. So there'll be more details to follow separately in emails and that, but they just got a hold of me today, and as our coordinators feel that we're in a position to go ahead, so we'll start planning for that, and hopefully we'll see a continuing opening up of the door as far as COVID's concerned, and possibly some other activities this summer that we had under consideration, like the Jiao Tai weekend, maybe having a super prowl or something like that. Anyhow, more to follow on that. So some good news there, and hopefully we're all now getting into the vaccinated category ourselves. So that's basically just a introductory comments that I wanted to make. So based on, we can go ahead now with the event tonight, which is the Jag Brag. And we've had two of our members, Mike Prasad and Giles Stevenson, who've been very gracious in offering to launch this type of event. There we go. I think I was muted for a while, which explains why everyone seems so happy to see my lips move but not hear anything come out of them. So anyhow, without further ado, Mike, I'm going to share screen with your pictures. And stand by. Here.
All right, I am sharing now. Hello, it's Mike Brossard here in Central Saanich, and this is my 1962 Mark II 3.8, which I got a couple of years ago from Bradley Restorations in Mount Vernon, Washington. The car was originally sold by Jaguar in New York and found its way to California, where Andrew Bradley's father had it. It was his daily driver. And Andy spent years and years upgrading it with various things. He put in a new transmission, which I had rebuilt last year. Throttle body fuel injection run by a Mega Squirt ECU. Power seats, power windows. Okay. The car was originally opalescent green when it was sold in New York, and then it became a white car in California. And when I bought it, it was white, but I preferred a better color. So Andy and I agreed on Sherwood green, and this is the color. It's kind of a grayish green, and it matches the upholstery perfectly. There are a few little things left to do, like refurbishing the wood trim, and that's really about it. I'll pop the bonnet so you'll notice that this is where the carburetors used to be, and we now have throttle body fuel injection here, and I have a new alternator because the old one couldn't keep up with the air conditioning that Andy installed. So other than that, the engine is stock, running well. Oh, and there's an XJ6 steering rack in it as well. Down there somewhere. Yeah. So that's well, the electrics, of course, were upgraded. Andy Bradley replaced the original seats with upgraded ones, XJ6 type seats, with little picnic tables in the off the front seats. And they're heated power seats. So that's from it. Those are XJ6 seats. And
Yeah.
there's the electrical controls, and then there's the heating switch there as well.
That's right, yeah.
Were the interior panels done as well, or is this just happened to be an excellent color match the way it is?
The interior panels were already, well, the two front doors had to be replaced because they
Right.
were not in good condition. So the two front interior door panels are new.
Yeah.
And I guess in some year I'll have the wood trim refinished because there's a lot of drying and cracking from the California sun and age. So there we are. There's always something. This is a project. It's not transportation.
So Mike, what kind of transmission has it got?
It's a General Motors 700R 4-speed transmission.
Oh, that's great. Lockup torque converter?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Okay.
But yeah, I had it rebuilt at Bullfrog last year, and it runs beautifully. And you get about 60 miles an hour at about 1600 RPM.
Wow.
This is the car when I originally saw it at Andy Bradley's down in Mount Vernon. So as the video said, we agreed on a Sherwood green instead of white, which I'm not fond of. Do you have any more stills there, Paul?
Yep. So gonna move them on here.
Yeah, so this is the car being prepped for painting. Next. Yeah, that's Andy Bradley handing me the keys to the car down in Mount Vernon. And there's the car at Jotai next to Peter Newman's XJR disguised as a Mark II. And there it is again, Jotai 2019. So that pretty much wraps it up. I'm happy to, oh, okay. I'm posing here as the new owner. I guess that's it. Happy to take questions if anyone has any.
I have to say, Mike, those are fabulous modifications to the car. I did a ground up restoration on a Mark II probably 25 years ago and drove it for a couple of years and absolutely loved the car, but it needs some things like you've done to it, and in the steering, there's so many turns lock to lock on the steering that I couldn't turn the steering wheel fast enough to do a Jaguar slalom in it. And so you've resolved all those issues. The Borg Warner transmission was pretty slow, and I think it was maybe a 2-speed, but the best of 3 speeds. So these are fabulous modifications.
Yeah, the transmission is brilliant. It's it works perfectly. The steering is tight. It's precise. It's just great on corners, and so I'm very happy with that. The only thing that's bugging me right now is I think it's a loss of vacuum on the brakes. If I'm stopped at a stoplight and for any longer than 10 seconds, I get some pushback on the brake, which tells me it's a loss of vacuum. So I'm contemplating taking it over to Octagon in Vancouver because there's the fellow there is very experienced with Mark IIs, and I had a couple of brake calipers were seized, so that's been fixed and new brake pads installed. So the brakes are fine, and as long as you're not sitting in drive at a stoplight for more than 10 seconds, in which case you get some pushback, and I find that very annoying, so I need to get that taken care of.
Yeah.
Was the car fuel injected when you bought it?
Yes, it was. Yeah. Andy had taken the carburetors out and replaced them with fuel injection. I had last year I had the injectors replaced with better ones. And the only fly in the ointment there, and it's from before, is the cold start is not great. But once the car's been running for a couple of minutes, things are fine.
I just wondered because I've got a 66S type that I've converted to fuel injection with Mega Squirt, and I used adapters that were made for a Triumph TR6 that replaces the dome and the piston of the SU with an injector. And just like you, cold start, yeah, but once it's running, great.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I found an excellent garage in here in Central Saanich that can tune the ECU to run the fuel injection, and they're great guys. It's called Carmena Performance up on Keating Crossroad, and they're great guys. Turns out there's another one downtown at a place called Paradigm, and they can tune Mega Squirt and other variants of fuel injection for the aftermarket fuel injection. So I think I'm covered there. The only thing I'm not covered with right now is brake service.
I don't know who would do that. I mean, maybe Owen, Richard Owen might be able to help you on that. Did you talk to him?
Yeah. I went up and spoke to them. They're too busy.
Okay. They got a really tiny shop there, and I don't know how they handle what they've got. I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. Richard was busy with his XK150 restoration, and Mike had kind of given up. I'd seen him a couple of times before to talk about it, and he put an extra check valve on the vacuum line from the intake on the engine, but he's very reluctant to do any more.
Does that have a vacuum canister on it, a tank for the vacuum?
Yeah, it's got a vacuum tank in behind the passenger side headlight. So I don't know if it's leaking from there or if the brake booster needs to be replaced or not. So when it's okay to travel by ferry, I'm going to take it over to Vancouver to Octagon and talk to Sean over there and see what the problem is.
Yeah. Well, I hope you. I'm sure they can figure it out.
Oh yeah, no, he says he's got a lot of experience with Mark IIs, and so this brake thing is the only thing that stands between me and perfection.
Well, you're a lucky guy having the car. I really love Mark IIs. It's something I should buy another one, but I just don't have the room. A common complaint.
Yeah, well, I'm not planning on buying any others for the time being. This is my project, and things are good. I take it out for runs on the Saanich Peninsula every week or two, and it's great. It runs fine. The steering is fantastic, and the brakes work fine for all practical purposes. It's just this one little annoying thing, and just something I need to sort out just to, because I have to.
The other thing I like about it is the XJ6 seats. They're like sitting in your living room watching TV on this incredibly comfortable seat. I rebuilt the seats in my Mark II, and I remember it felt like I was sitting on a basketball. I don't know why, but the center of the bottom section of the seat, just you kind of sit on it and rocked and rolled while you were sitting on it.
Yeah, no, these.
But not in XJ6 seats.
These are great. They're firm. They're very comfortable. So, Andy down in Mount Vernon did a brilliant job upgrading this car for his dad, who his parents unfortunately perished in a car. In an automobile accident. He inherited the car, but he's mostly an MG restorer. So, you know, he's not really into Jags, although he's done a couple of XKEs and whatnot, but he does Heelys and mostly MGs. But so he wanted to find a good home for it, and my brother put me on to Andy, and here we are.
Yeah. Well, good for you. I'm envious.
Okay, well, thanks, Paul. That's all I've got.
Well, great, and good to see the presentation and the discussion afterwards.
Yeah,
Willing
and
to
thanks,
get there.
Peter. Thanks, Peter, for doing the video. The video was great. Really appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, good. I'm glad that worked out, and I hope everyone enjoyed that. I'll put it out there as well. If we have another Jag brag, I'd be happy to mask up and come over and take a 5-minute video of your car as you can speak to it as Mike did.
Well, that's great. That really adds to it, adds to the interactivity, Peter. So I appreciate that. So our next presentation is going to be from Giles Stevenson. Giles, over to you.
Okay, I'll just get the slides up and running if I can. Okay, can you see the slide?
Mm-hmm.
Can you see the slide?
No.
Yeah.
We're seeing a screen with a whole bunch of stuff on it. I don't know what they're called.
Oh, yes. Is
We've got your whole screen. There we go.
There we go.
that better?
Yeah,
Yeah.
there we are. Yeah.
Okay. This talk is actually you get to Jags in the end, but it's a canter through 63 years of motoring. And the first, which gives me so much pleasure. The first thing to say is that the love of cars is an inherited disease. This is my father at the age of 16 in 1928 in his first car. And he absolutely loved cars. He was 16 at the time, and he absolutely loved cars. Let me just get how I get the advances to going. And when I was a kid, this is me as a kid in Devonshire on our summer holiday, and my dad's Giant Javelin. He went through 4 or 5 Giant Javelins in succession when he was a family doc. And then he became a clergyman, and we had some routine family cars, Morris Oxfords and things. And then he decided he really should have a Bentley for a while, so he had a big old black Bentley. And then he felt his youth again, and he got a little Renault Gordini, which he wrapped around a stone wall on Dartmoor in the end. So I inherited this love of cars. These are all the vehicles I've owned in my time since my first one at the age of 18, which was this Austin Big 7, which is a marvelous little car. I feel slightly inadequate talking to you guys who know how to put in transmissions and things like that, because basically I like driving cars and polishing them and sitting in them. But I don't know, the only tools I can use are a wrench, a screwdriver, and a pair of pliers. But this little car was easy. I'd had it about a year, and when the big ends went, there was this knock, knock, knock. And I discovered to my astonishment that it was easy to climb underneath, drain the sump, take the sump off, and then pull out the cotter pins and take off the bottom of the con rods and put the new shells in. And to my astonishment, it worked beautifully. I was quite pleased with myself. I thought that was real major surgery. But the next thing that happened was that the brakes were not very good, and they got worse and worse and worse. So I bought new pads for the drum brakes. I replaced the pads. Well, good, I fixed that, and the brakes were no better, which was very disheartening. And eventually I gave up and got rid of the car. And it was 30 years later before I discovered there's a thing called a spring. What happens with these old cars is that there's no hydraulics, of course. There's just cables, wires that run from the brake back to the brakes. And you can buy something called a spring, which clips onto the wire, and then you pull them together and then the brakes work again. But that was 30 years before I discovered that I could have actually fixed the brakes quite easily. Anyway, so I had to move on. And the next, I had 2 of these. This is the 1936 BSA Scout, which was a 4-seater open car, top speed, downhill, following wind, about 68 miles an hour, and an absolute joy to drive. It had a cork clutch with 2 plates, each with 52 corks encased in oil. So it was very, very smooth take up, front wheel drive. And that was an awful lot of fun when I was an undergraduate. I then ran out of money and I had to go down to, at the top here, a Vespa. So when my wife and I were engaged, we'd go from London to Plymouth, about 200 miles. It took us about 10 hours on a Friday evening to get down to my parents, then back again on the Sunday afternoon. So Vespa for a while. Once I qualified though, the next thing, which was fun, was a Rover. So this is my Rover, a Rover 105S, built like a tank. It would cruise forever at 90, 95 miles an hour. There's the front picture of it in Plymouth, where I was working, and then the other picture, my wife and I on our way from Paris up to Denmark to visit her family. Effortless car, absolute joy to drive. Then after that, I moved to Bristol in southern England, and the next thing was this one in the corner here. Take this picture taken in Wales. This is the Bristol 405, and the history of this is really quite fun. One of the majors, one of the directors of the Bristol Aircraft Company was a major in a tank regiment towards the end of the war. And he got to the BMW factory in Germany in March 1945, and drove his tanks through the gate and stole the BMW blueprints for post-war car and post-war engine. When he got home and the war was over, he persuaded the Bristol Aircraft Company to set up a car division. And in 1947, they produced the first one, the Bristol 400. Had a wonderful 2-litre engine, which is directly pinched from BMW. And the top picture on this slide here, there's the 3 cars like this that they entered in the 1954 Le Mans. And they finished first, second, and third in the 2-litre class. Very reliable, beautiful cars. And the bottom picture is the 1955 Bristol at Le Mans, which also finished. That was the year that Neve had his appalling accident and 80 people were killed. But these cars, the Bristol 405, the one I got, was £5,000 when it was new. This is the 403 at the top, which is the one of my friends. When I bought the 405, my friend bought the 403, which was this top one. Very expensive car. So this is a time when the doctor who was doing well made £1,000 a year, and the Bristol 405 was £5,000 new. So 5 years' salary for a car. And they always expensive. The bottom picture, the little grey job, is the Bristol Fighter T, which was one of the last they made. And this was 1,000 horsepower, the Bristol Fighter T, and the cost of this in 2010 was £365,000. So not surprisingly, Bristol went bankrupt pretty soon after that. There weren't many people who could afford to buy that. This is my car, shown end on with my wife's L plate on it, and the top picture on Pendine Sands, where Barry Thomas had his head chopped off when he was doing the speed trials. And we had the Bristol on the sands there just for fun. So that was a marvelous car, incredibly comfortable. It had a hand throttle, full harness, safety belts, no triangle, no lap belt and diagonal, full harness, unbelievably comfortable, wonderful vehicle. Well, probably at that time and for many years, the best car I ever had. After that, we went back to practical things, a minivan, a Vauxhall Victor, and then we went to Canada for a year. We came to Dawson Creek, and when I was looking for my job there for Dawson Creek, the people I was working with in Calgary said, we're all buying Chryslers. Well, 3 of us are buying Chryslers, and if someone buys a 4th, we get a fleet deal, $100 over factory price. Would you go and buy yourself a Chrysler? So I went down to McLeod Trail to the Chrysler dealer and said, what's the biggest Chrysler you make? And they said, oh, it's the Town and Country wagon. I said, how long is it? They said, 23 feet. I said, what's the biggest engine it comes with? Oh, 455, they said, 7 litres. Good, knobs and whistles come with it. So I bought the biggest and best car I could get. It cost $6,000 in 1972. And after a magical year driving this monster, we sold it for $5,700. So it really didn't cost us very much. It was a brute of a car, 9 seats and incredibly powerful. Easter weekend, we drove from Dawson Creek to Prince Rupert and back again. Here it is at the Skeena River. And in May, we went down to San Francisco. And in the bottom picture on the way home, we came through Utah. And here's the car on the Bonneville Salt Flats, where we confirmed that it would do its advertised top speed of 140 miles an hour. Magical car to have for a year in North America, totally impractical to take back to England. We got back to England and we got a little yellow car here over on the right, Renault 4L. And this was an elastic car. We got 8 people and a dog in that. Here's a picture of me on Dartmoor in Devonshire, taking my daughter camping for a couple of nights with the Renault 4L. Love that little car. We then moved back to Canada in '76, got a Dodge Dart, which was horrible, and then a series of station wagons. And then we were planning to go to Australia for sabbatical for a year. So just for fun, I thought, let's have a fun car. So I bought a really stupid car, which was this one. And everyone said, Giles, what's gone wrong? Have you got a mistress or something? Are you having a midlife crisis? This again had a 7-litre engine, but it was all brute power. It didn't have particularly good cornering or anything, but it was kind of crazy. It certainly attracted attention. People made all sorts of odd comments about me and the car, but it was kind of fun. Then in Australia for a year, we had a Ford Cortina, which was a practical thing in Australia. When we came home again, we had to be a bit more sensible, and we had a series of station wagons. As the kids grew up, we got a series of Toyota Tercels that the kids learned to drive in, which they could wreck safely and not do themselves any harm. I had a bit of fun over here with a Toyota Super Turbo, secondhand Toyota Super Turbo for a year, which again was a really enjoyable car to drive. Then we moved back to BC, and we were practical for a little bit. We got this Volvo and a VW Golf for my wife. And then it was fun time again. And fun time was a TR6 and a BMW. That they are here. The TR6 is interesting. It wasn't very powerful. It only had 105 brake horsepower. Apparently, though, in Britain, the TR6 was mostly 150 brake horsepower, but a lot of the ones exported to the US were only 100. But it was fun. And then I got a second-hand BMW Z3M. And that was a marvelous car, comfortable, super performance. I used to work in Port Alberni for a while, on and off then. And after you go past Cathedral Grove, you've got that wonderful uphill bend to the top with all the tight corners. And taking this BMW up that hill when there was no other traffic around really was quite a joy. After this, it was then time to think about Jaguars. So the bottom one on the left here, so the first one I got was a 2001 XK8, which I enjoyed. And then after that, possibly the most beautiful car I've ever owned, this one. This is the XKR, the 2005 XKR. Extraordinarily comfortable, very nippy, joy to drive. One time I was working in Cranbrook and I finished my stint on Saturday night. And I was off from 5 o'clock on Sunday morning. So I had started to head home from Cranbrook back down here. And I came to a straight at 5:30 in the morning, 10 kilometre long straight with a slightly elevated road. So no trees at the side, nothing could jump out, no cars to be seen behind or in front. Well, this is the time to see if it's really true that the Jaguars have a governor on them. So I cranked it up and I can tell you it is true. At 255 kilometers an hour, this da-da-da-da-da-da comes in as the governor kicks in. I'm told that without a governor, they'll go to about 275, but with the governor, 255 is what you get. Beautiful, beautiful car. I had this for a couple of years and absolutely loved it. And then we got rid of that and went to the S-Type. And I chose this blue S-Type because it had manual transmission. I really like manual transmission, but this is a 2003 S-Type with manual transmission, which I really enjoyed. But they no longer make them with manual transmission. And the next card after that is the one that I still have now. This is the 2007 XKR. Here we are on our way from Prince Rupert down to Cranbrook, going right across the province. Such a lovely car for long distance touring. And then I have one more Jag, this XJR, which is again extraordinarily comfortable. I had that for a couple of years. And then in 2016, I thought it was time to go electric. So we got the Tesla, the S-type Tesla. We took it across the country in 2017 and again in 19. The first time was quite tricky because there are not many charging stations at that point, and they were mostly slow ones. So we'd leave the motel at 8 in the morning, we could drive till noon, and then we'd have to charge up for 5 hours. And if you have the heat on in the cold weather, the range goes down by a third. So we had to stop at a PV Mart and buy extra big coats to keep ourselves warm because we couldn't do a good mileage and have the heater on. The second time we went in 2019, life was easier. And so we've been twice to Toronto and back, and now there are good high-speed chargers right across the country. Coming back in 2019, we were coming over the Kootenay Pass in a howling, terrific thunderstorm, a heavy rain that had washed some stones out on the road. And we hit one of these rocks about the size of my fist with one of the front tires. And there was a bang. And this nice little message came up on the dashboard saying 0 PSI, pull over and stop when safe, which I thought was a very nice little message to get. So we did indeed pull over and stop. And after we were not in cell phone range, so someone gave me a ride into the nearest town, and we arranged the tow that took us down to Trail. So we had to spend a weekend in Trail. This was a Saturday night weekend in Trail while we were waiting for places to open so we could get fresh tires. And driving down into Trail was interesting. This is a picture of us arriving in Trail. Those of you that have read Lord of the Rings will realize this looks like you're driving down into Mordor. It really looks a most appalling place to drive down into in the dusk. And we learned a new word in that weekend in Trail, and the word is leaded. The word lead used as a verb. You'll all know the story of how Patterson got lead removed from gas in the 1970s and 80s, the big struggle. You may or may not know that Beethoven was also leaded. Beethoven's hair, when analyzed in about 1970, was absolutely loaded with lead. He must have had lead pipes or lead cooking stuff or something. So poor old Beethoven had chronic lead poisoning. Now in Trail, people get leaded, and if you work in the smelter, and it's a thing devoutly to be hoped for, because once you've been leaded, once your lead level has been measured at a certain level, you get a pension for life and you can't work in the smelter anymore. So being leaded is the most wonderful thing to happen, provided it doesn't knock you off too badly first. Anyway, we have enjoyed very much the Jag Club over the last few years, both the exotica that have appeared on the field from time to time, the events that we've had, both the formal ones and the informal ones. I enjoyed taking part in the slalom. Despite Terry Sturgeon's valiant efforts, I thought he was going to win the slalom this year. This little Lotus 7 trumped everybody. But I've had so much fun with cars, and I feel that I have been living the dream with the automobile over the last 60 years, and the wonderful, wonderful vehicles I've had the privilege and pleasure of enjoying, and the friends I've made through that. And now I get to the point of saying, well, what's next? Life is short, carpe diem. So I need your advice, guys. What should I buy next? I've bought a different car, roughly every 2 years. I had 32 cars in 63 years of motoring, but at the moment it's 5 years since I bought a car. So what should I get next? I need your advice. This is the short list. Do I want a 2018 XJL, or do I want a Cybertruck with its own expandable telescopic cabin in the back? So any comments or questions, and I'd love your advice as to what I should do next.
Well, that was a wonderful presentation, Giles. It's amazing the scope of your automotive experience and your travels and the humor that you injected into that. And I hope that you'll be provided with a whole bunch of sage advice from the members here tonight on what the next item should be. I was quite impressed with that thing that looks like one of the UFOs that's prominent in the media right now. But no, that was very, very entertaining. Thank you for that. So
Well,
I'll open up the table to any suggestions for Giles.
Well, Jules, if it was up to me, I'd get a new Corvette. I just have a friend who just bought one and thinks it's absolutely the greatest car ever made.
Yeah.
You know, something, a little sort of some American iron like you've enjoyed in the past.
Yes.
I was going to ask you, did that Bristol 405 you had, did you know Barry McCullum in the club?
Not the name. I may have recognized it by face.
He was the guy that beat me with that Lotus Super 7 at the autocross.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, Barry, I think, has a 405 that he's trying to, well, he had it that he was trying to restore.
Wow.
Just a couple of years ago. It's a fiberglass body, isn't it?
Aluminum.
Aluminum body. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
And anyway, he had this shell and all the stuff that was on the side of it that he was going to do. I don't know. I haven't talked to him in a couple of years, so I don't know how far he's gotten with it.
It was a fun car, marvelous car.
Yeah. What, inline 6-cylinder engine?
Yes.
Yeah.
2 liters. And they bored it out to 2.2 for the 406 because it just wasn't quite enough power. And then they bailed altogether and put a 5-liter Chrysler engine in the 407.
Well, no, that's always good. You know,
Yes.
ain't no substitute for cubic inches.
Right.
Is it a turbo Trans Am you had?
Yes.
Would that be that's a 4.9 liter engine, isn't it?
My memory is it was 7, but I may be wrong.
Okay, yeah. Because I had one, a turbo Trans Am, it was 4.9 liters.
Yeah, you may well be right. I've remembered it as the Chrysler Town and Country wagon was certainly 455. I may be mistaken on the turbocharged pace car. But
Major turbo lag.
Yeah, it was fast, but it was not a great. Its cornering was nothing like the XKR.
No.
Just brute power.
Yes.
Do you remember how much you paid for that station wagon, Giles?
I paid 6,000 for it. Yes.
Wow.
In 1972.
It just brings memories because when we emigrated from Australia in '74, my dad bought a big blue 2-door Catalina, and I think he paid $2,000 for it. But anyway, when I saw that huge boat of a car, it just brought back memories.
One time there's a town called Taylor, which is halfway between Dawson Creek and Fort St. John. If you know the north, you'll know Taylor. It's a place with lots of oil wells and burning little bits of oil in the sky and smog. And there was a competition on the radio when we were in Dawson Creek, and the guy announced the first prize is a night on the town in Taylor, and the second prize is 2 nights on the town in Taylor. I was on the way home. I'd been working in Fort St. John, and I was on the way back in the late afternoon to Dawson Creek. And coming out of Taylor, there's a long climb up and up and up and up and up and up. And I came up behind a Mustang. And we got to finally over the top crest, and there's about 3 miles straight right in front. I put my foot down, and the Mustang put his foot down. And the Chrysler had the legs of the Mustang. He got up to about 135, and I got up to my 140, and I sort of kept past him at walking speed. And so that Chrysler, it was a very fast car. It also had an 8-track, which was the thing of the day. And I had the Beethoven Triple Concerto on the 8-track with Rostropovich playing. And so whenever I hear that particular music now, I'm back on the road between Dawson Creek and Chetwynd, or Dawson Creek and Fort St. John, taken back by the music.
You didn't happen to have a Bee Gees tape for it, did you? Saturday Night Fever? Tell me, just lie to me. Tell me you had.
We would have had that in Australia with the Cortina. My uncle had a Cortina in Australia. I remember it was a nice little car.
Lovely car. Yeah, that was suited as well. Yeah.
That's a tremendous record of all the cars you owned. I don't think anybody else, this evening has a record, of all the cars we owned. My first car was a Lotus 6.
Oh, very nice.
My second car was a Gogomobile.
What?
A Gogomobile.
Yes. What's that?
And I think I've gone downhill ever since. Do you remember the Goggleboro, Terry?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's quite a steep hill from a Goggleboro, I have to tell you. That's free fall, Peter.
Yeah. That's a great presentation. Really enjoyed it. Yeah. Mm.
I was impressed to see your commentary on the electric cars too, the Teslas and that. Of course, it's the way of the future, and with the Jaguar going electric now. What's your impression on the development of electric vehicles?
I admire Elon Musk very much. I don't know that Tesla's going to survive, but I think he's changed. He's made everybody else change. Tesla may or may not go bust, but it do all right for a while. But he's forced the whole industry to go the same way, which is quite an achievement.
You don't want a Tesla Roadster?
I've seen a couple of them. They're astonishing. The new Tesla Roadsters, mind you, it's a bit pricey. It's $250,000.
Oh, gee. Now that Cybertruck, who makes that? Or is that actually in existence, or is that something you pulled off a sci-fi site?
No, the Cybertruck is coming in 23 or 24, and someone has just produced that telescopic thing, that camper that goes in the back, and there's some nice videos of how it unwinds and unfolds on YouTube.
I'll have to look for that.
There are two little chairs in that trailer, and you press a button or speak to it, and they lift themselves up and turn themselves around and turn into a bed.
Wow.
It's very much a futuristic thing.
You wouldn't want to hit the wrong button when you're in the damn thing, though, and have yourself compressed into a sardine can.
If the whole thing comes down again and you're inside, it would be very disagreeable.
And you've had quite a stable of Jaguars too, so
I really enjoyed them. I've still got the XKR, the
right.
2007 one, and I love that. It's a great car. But I missed the manual transmission. Like many of you, I suspect, I really like manual transmissions, but not available.
Yeah.
Well, you've set a pretty high bar as far as this kind of event, JagBrags, are concerned, as far as at least quantities, at least as far as quantity is concerned. It's I think you've got the equivalent of an Arab sheikh's harem as far as vehicles are concerned. And I really that Bristol that was really quite an impressive vehicle.
It's a beautiful car.
Yeah, it looked like well ahead of its time.
Yeah, people were quite rude about it. I remember I was coming out of a conference, and my namesake, Derek Stevenson, was the secretary of the British Medical Association, and his wife was with him. And they walked across the car park and straight past my Bristol. And his wife said, "God, look at that, Derek. It looks like a suppository." I thought,
I'm curious, did your dad haul that big trailer with that Jowett?
yes, he did.
That must have been fairly slow trip.
For its time, the Jowett had a lot of power. He
Yeah.
those Jowett javelins.
Well, I spent 4 years in England, so from 2013 to 2017, and having driven on the roads there, I think the challenge for anything of that size would be just trying to get through the actual road systems.
Yes.
Yeah, but the Brits still love their campers and trailers and that whole culture.
The
The
caravans.
car that I thought was the most beautiful I'd ever seen when I first saw one, in 1957, the year I left school, I went cycling with two friends in France, and we came across Citroën DS19. And at that time, that Citroën DS19 was an awesome sight. Such a beautiful, beautiful vehicle.
Well, I've got to say, you've already made me feel better because 57 was the year I was born.
You're still a spring chicken.
Oh, and it was great presentations. I hope that the presentations we've seen today encourage a lot of our other members to maybe come forward. I know a lot of you have got some pretty interesting vehicles and stories to tell. So we're looking, hopefully doing this as a bit of an ongoing series along with some other ideas.
Why don't we
but-
try and persuade Gregory to do a thing on his Mark II?
That'd be good.
Yes. Yeah, no, and I know Gregory could certainly fill the bill as far as being able to delve into all the details and history and background. But I invite anyone out there who wants to add to it. I think this is a great way to get to know our members and at the same time get to know the vehicles.
And I think Jeff Moyes probably has a whack of cars he could probably, go on in great detail about.
Yeah.
Well, those are two folks that I'll be happy to sort of contact directly and see if we can get them to volunteer.
Yeah.
May involve some bribery, but we'll see what we can do with that. As I said, I don't know if everyone copied the introductory comments, but as I said at the beginning, just to reinforce, I got an email from Phil and Lois, our Prowl coordinators today, and given the lifting somewhat of the restrictions on COVID, they're looking to plan for our first Prowl on Sunday, June 6th. D-Day.
Where to?
No details yet. More to follow. But I thought I'd just make that announcement here tonight, and hopefully we'll be able to start getting out of the bubbles. And I'm sure Phil and Lois will come up with something interesting. As I said, it's a D-Day, but I'm not aware of anniversary D-Day. But I don't think we have any amphibious Jaguars around. So
We'll have to storm a beach.
yes. And I see Doug Uffen. How's things going in your neck of the woods?
Things are going well. We have 9 people interested in being founding members to an Alberta, Saskatchewan affiliate JCNA club. Word is starting to spread now through social media channels and through friends and colleagues of friends and that kind of thing. So it's starting to gain momentum, and I'm now getting approaches from people who I've never met, people in Saskatchewan and Lloydminster and places outside of Calgary as well. So it's garnering support and interest, and word is spreading. The Jaguar Royal Oak dealership, which opened up within the last year, is in full support of us and willing to help out any way they can. Their show and shine event, however, has been postponed from June 14th, June 19th to August 14th. So we're moving it back a couple of months. So planning is going out, and I just got the invitations this morning, and I sent a whole bunch of them out recently. I'd like to thank you, Terry, for some of the contacts that you have in your network. A couple of them have already approached me and expressed an interest and desire to help out as well. Yeah, we're gaining momentum.
Well, that's great and good news to hear. For those who aren't aware, that I should have mentioned at the beginning that Doug is working, as you can imagine, from what he's just given us, is on the establishment of a club in Alberta, in the Calgary, Calgary and Edmonton.
I'm in Calgary,
Yeah.
but we're looking to make this a Alberta Saskatchewan
Right.
club. And I just like to also mention that Carol has been a big help and a big supporter. And thank you again, Carol, for everything that you've done so far.
Yeah, it'll be great to, and it's good to hear you're starting to really get some momentum on that. Just as an aside, I did actually send an invitation to our colleagues in the state of Victoria in Australia to Faisal Kader. I don't think anyone was able to join, even with the time zone difference. It's still not too bad for them. It's actually tomorrow at noon was when this started. So hopefully we'll be able to see more interactivity with them. But I think it's important to keep that dialogue going. And who knows, we might see some Aussie Jag brags. Aussies are pretty good at that type of stuff.
Paul, we used to, a long time ago, we used to start each meeting with a question, has anybody bought or sold a Jaguar in the last month? And I haven't, but the Jaguar that I sold a couple of years back to Bob and Glennis Jackson, the most beautiful 2006 XJR in British and Jaguar Racing Green, is now for sale again. So it's, if anybody wants the most perfect grand touring four-door car capable of the computer controlled maximum speed that you talked about, it's for sale in the Songhees there. So, and I have to say it is the most beautiful car that I have ever owned or driven. So.
It drove by me on Oak Bay Avenue a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
lovely car. Yeah.
Yeah. Spectacular to look at. You cannot park it anywhere without having a conversation with some stranger. And on the highway, it's got intelligent cruise control. You can flash down to California in no time.
On the other end of that's a great suggestion, by the way. Should continue that tradition. On the other end of the spectrum, I had a concept which was called Jags in Jeopardy. And that's just even driving around Oak Bay, noticing, I started taking photos of some of these, noticing in backyards and that some Jaguars that are in less than enviable condition and might need rescuing as a project. And there's quite a few of them, yeah, if you look around. So
they're just waiting for their electric motors.
Yeah, I mean.
I'll draw members' attention. Paul, if you make me a co-host, I can share it. There's a blue Mark 10 that just appeared on Used Victoria in the last couple of days. I don't know if other people have seen this as well, but
let me just see here.
But quite a striking car, and at least from the not particularly great photographs, seems to be in fairly decent condition. I don't know if any members may have some background on this.
Here you go, Peter.
This is just the Used Victoria ad here, but they're asking all of $3,000 for it, $3,600.
Wow. Malcolm Reith has got a couple of them, actually. He's a member. Lives in Vancouver.
Yeah, if he's looking for another.
Okay, I don't know. I think he's trying to get rid of one of the two. That looks like a good car for, well, exceptional car.
Doesn't that car look familiar, Terry?
No. There was a car that Simon Scott and George Fitzgeorge Parker bought. It was that color, but it was an S-type. Is that what you're thinking of?
It could be. Maybe it's the color I'm reacting to.
Yeah. I don't think I've seen this Mark 10 before. You don't see too many of them anymore.
No, I looked at it yesterday. And it's pretty decent. Needs some interior work, headliner, some of the wood veneers and the door panels, the seats and the leathers are good. The car does not run, or was unable to start it for me. It has low compression in 2 cylinders, and it was taken into, Mike Owen knows the details on it, and the seller said that he thought the valves were sticking. Although when I checked for coolant, I didn't see any. So with two adjacent cylinders having low compression, one wonders if there's something else wrong. But it's a Vancouver car. I think the seller is the third owner, and it certainly has some appeal. So if anyone wants a Mark 10, it's up in North Saanich, out by the ferry, and the seller is a very nice gentleman. So Jeremy. So give him a call.
I just put the used Victoria listing in the chat window for this Zoom session. So if anyone's more interested.
After seeing Malcolm Reith compete in the last slalom with his Mark 10, they should not be discounted. He drives well. The car sounded wonderful, and maybe I should just move on to my next question. I think we should get another slalom going this year.
Yeah. We should.
Do we have an organizer? Is it Adrian?
Does Dave Frisbee still want to be involved?
Dave does. He and I, we're sharing duties.
Okay.
And although I don't know what the latest is with Western Speedway, I think I'd heard that they're intending to have a season this year, which is where we would hold our slalom. But Dave Frisbee definitely wants to stay involved. And so I offered to apprentice under him. So that's my role. I can talk to him. And where are we? Beginning of June. We usually have them in July. It's usually extremely hot. That's my only complaint. The weather is usually reliably good. I've not known it rain on a slalom day. But why don't I talk to Dave Frisbee, and one of us will get in touch with Western Speedway, and we'll see if we can think about a date.
Yeah, I live close to Dave, and I think Dave would appreciate still being involved. He's done a lot for the club in that regard in the past. The July is perfect, of course, because our tires get pretty hot. But we don't know the availability of the track, and I've also heard that it may be available throughout 2022 as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, of course go ahead.
It's a lot of fun. There's maybe a dozen of us turn up, that kind of thing. But I really encourage more members in the club to come to the track and just try it out and just learn to drive the cars the way they were built. And you should really try it.
Yeah, I know that we've had some discussions there with the board about options and what we can do. Of course, it's been a challenging year and continues to be so, but hopefully we're seeing some, as I said, some opening doors. And we had the concept of a mini Joe tie at one point. We could possibly pull it off this year, but time's getting short. I do believe it would be advantageous to still put together a Joe tie committee and Joe tie and fill that out. So that might be a function that committee could run with this year, but certainly in getting us in a position for hopefully going back to full normalcy next year. But we'd like to do something if we can. Again, it's a very difficult planning environment. We've got good news today, but you never know in a few weeks. So this is why we've sort of adopted a 30-day look ahead policy. So I think we could pull things off this summer. Obviously, it's going to be a reduced audience from the point of view that I think if we do anything this summer, it's still going to be within our health regions. So Victoria precludes probably any transport from the mainland, and certainly from the United States and possibly other provinces. But I mean, we've been open to this, but I guess we're just going to roll with the punches, and hopefully if we can move fast enough off our feet, I think doing something like a slalom and the super prowl concept that we had is something that's achievable if we can keep it within the scope of being able to do something and organize it within the limitation set and within probably the short fuse timeframes we'll be dealing with. So, and the good news is that at least we're hopeful we'll be able to start our prowls this next month.
I think Dr. Bonnie said that be able to travel to Vancouver on the ferry by June 15th. So
yeah,
I think by then we should be able to get people over from Vancouver.
Yeah.
And I just want to point out, I just got my trophy for slalom for the autocross last year, and all you guys can win one. You just have to enter. Now, if that's not an incentive, what would be? I would have to pay you, other than this.
Terry, even I got one.
Yeah, I know.
Even
We
I
all got
arrived.
one.
Vancouver Victoria did very well, actually.
Yeah. I mean, you
Only
can't
because-
enter this. Go ahead.
Only because nobody else in the States was driving slalom.
Yeah. Yeah. You couldn't enter last year and not get a trophy. The best kind of competition.
Yeah.
Well, as Adrian said, I think the first issue there is to determine the venue, the status. And I know we've been discussing this with the board previously, and it just seems that that's been a bit of a question mark, and to some degree remains so. But Adrian,
I have been talking to them, but I haven't spoken to them very recently.
Right.
Previously, they've said they've got nothing to tell me,
Yeah.
to update me. But since I now and again go on to their website, and I think that the new owner of the Western Speedway is willing to have another couple of seasons, including this year. And then after next year, it's uncertain.
Well, it certainly behooves us then to take advantage of it while it's still there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I'll get in touch with
Right.
with Western Speedway.
Well, I see some of our folks are starting to take the off ramp on the Zoom. So and we're at past 8 o'clock. So I'm happy to leave this open if whoever wants to still get involved in discussions, and I'll just leave the meeting open. But other than that, just getting control of my dogs here. Other than that, I think we've had a great initial launch for this concept of JagBrag, and thanks again to Mike and Giles for your participation in getting the ship down the rails, as they say, and very interesting presentations indeed. So we're keeping our creativity juices flowing to try to find some more virtual activities. Hopefully they'll just pretty soon be supporting actual physical activities and prowls and get-togethers in person soon.